I was dead for 23 minutes. Nothing supernatural happened. Until I heard 3 words Jesus told me to never say again in prayer.
Died suddenly from a brain aneurysm on what seemed like just another ordinary afternoon. But that moment was not the end. It was where the real journey began. During the time her heart stopped beating, Lisa's soul was taken into a place beyond all understanding, where she encountered the one she had only known through Scripture, Jesus Christ. There was no judgment, no punishment, only unconditional love, deep understanding, and lessons that would forever change how one lives, prays, and believes. The story you are about to read is not just about a miraculous near-death experience. It is a reminder that God is still listening, that prayer carries power, and that true faith doesn't begin with striving, but with the certainty that you are loved. Lisa came back, not simply to live on, but to carry and share the light she had seen, the love she had felt, and the truth she now walks in, with every word, every breath, and every prayer. I don't remember how I died. All I know is that a sudden pain tore through my mind so fast. I had no time to resist. No scream. No struggle. Just a flash of blinding pain, and then silence. I used to think death was something terrifying, darkness, fear. But when it came, I wasn't afraid. It was just, I wasn't there anymore. I found myself looking down, a strange scene that my mind couldn't make sense of. A woman slumped over a desk, head tilted to the side. Dark hair tangled across a page marked with unfinished red ink. It was me. I stood there, or rather, I existed there, with no body, no touch. Yet I recognized every familiar detail, the pen, the test paper, the drawing Josh made, hanging on the fridge. Everything felt too real, too clear. And I was standing on the edge between 2 worlds I had only ever known through whispered prayers at night. Josh ran in like he did every afternoon. He always came to the kitchen after basketball practice. But today, there were no giggles, no chatter. Just a pause, hesitant and instinctive. "Mom?" He walked closer, his small feet pattering across the tile. He shook my shoulder, the body that was no longer mine. "Mom, wake up." His voice trembled. Then I saw him start to cry, sobbing, panicking. I could feel every tear falling on my shirt like drops of acid burning into my soul. I tried to scream, to touch him, to do anything to let him know I was still there. But I couldn't. No sound. No form. I looked at my child, the boy I had once rocked to sleep, soothed night after night, now crying out in despair. And I, his mother, could only watch. Something inside me shattered. Not because I had died, but because Josh had to witness it alone. I had prayed for him every night for peace, for safety, for a happy childhood. But I never prepared for this. How could an 8-year-old possibly understand that his mother had just left? As the distant wail of the ambulance siren grew louder, the space around me began to shift softly, but unmistakably. A force was pulling me away from the reality I once called life. I felt myself drifting, not resisting. Not because I didn't want to stay, but because something deeper was calling. A summons my heart couldn't deny. I was no longer a teacher grading papers. No longer a mother stressing about mortgage payments or finding new shoes for her kid. I was a bare soul, facing the truth that everything I had known was just a small part of something far greater. And strangely, in the most painful moment of all, I began to feel something I had lost for so long. Faith. I don't know when I left the kitchen. There was no door opening. No footsteps. Just, I wasn't there anymore. Everything around me now was unlike the physical world I had known. No walls. No ceiling. No floor. And yet, I didn't feel empty. Quite the opposite. I had never felt so full. I didn't see light like from a lamp or the sun. It was a living light, as if existence itself had become light. It didn't blind me. It didn't expose me. It embraced me. And then, he came. I didn't see him appear. There was no thunder, no lightning. He was simply there. And I knew it was him. No introduction. No explanation. Jesus. Not like any image I'd ever seen. No white robe. No halo. No specific eye color. But from him radiated something no words could hold. Complete understanding. Unconditional love. He looked at me. That look didn't just pass over my face. It pierced through every shadow I'd ever tried to hide. Every mistake, every resentment, every doubt. Every time I'd whispered, "God, I'm so tired. Are you still there?" I had nothing left to hide. And strangely, I didn't want to. Because in that gaze, there was no judgment. Only a love so vast. It broke me open inside, as if every stone I'd carried in my heart melted into tears. I wept. Not from shame, but from release. Lisa, he called me. The sound didn't echo in my ears. It echoed in my soul. My name, something I'd heard every day, suddenly became sacred when spoken from his lips. Your name is not just a name. He seemed to say without words. It is who you've always been to me. I don't know if I was standing, kneeling, or simply floating. It didn't matter. Before him, I was only one thing. A daughter of the Father. No roles. No masks. No conditions. In my mind, I whispered, I'm not good enough. I've doubted. I've prayed in fear, not in faith. He smiled. And that smile, it wasn't just gentle. It had the power to quiet every question inside me. I know, he said. And I was always there. I didn't see hellfire. I didn't see scales weighing sin and virtue. All I saw was my heart, laid bare before a love far greater than anything I'd ever believed was real. I used to think I prayed a lot, but now I understood. Most of my prayers were whispered with hesitation, spoken out of fear, not trust. I talked to God about my fears, but rarely truly believed he was listening. But he was. He always was. I never left you in the silence, Lisa, he said. You just forgot how to hear me in faith. There was no rebuke in him. He taught me through his eyes, through love, through a presence so whole, I never wanted to return anywhere else. I didn't need answers anymore. His presence was the answer. I used to think I understood love pretty well. I had loved my son enough to forget myself. I had loved my students with a devotion that asked for nothing in return. I had loved life with all the effort of a single mother just trying to make it through. But in the moment I stood before him, I realized I had never truly understood what unconditional love meant. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Everything inside me was already laid bare. Not in part. Not just the surface. Everything. He knew me. He knew the nights I cried alone after Josh fell asleep, because I felt like I wasn't enough. He knew the times I sat silent in church, pretending to pray while feeling hollow inside. He knew every moment of doubt, every whispered question in my heart. If God loves me, why is life so exhausting? I used to believe that if someone saw all the dark parts of me, they'd walk away. But Jesus didn't turn away. He came closer. In his eyes was something no human language could describe. Not just forgiveness, but a depth of understanding that reached the core of who I was. An acceptance with no strings attached. No explanations required. No proof needed. I didn't have to deserve love. In the world, everything comes with conditions. Love, respect, trust. All of it tied to if and because. But here, in the presence of God, I was loved for no reason. Not for achievements. Not for morality. Not even for effort. I was loved simply because I was his. I wasn't worthy. But he never loved me because I was worthy. He loved me because he is love. I had worn so many layers. The armor of a mother holding it all together. The shell of a weary believer. The mask of someone constantly feeling not enough. But in his gaze, every layer melted away. I was just Lisa, the daughter he had never forgotten. The one he never gave up on. I bowed my head. There was no ground to kneel on. But my soul knelt. And then, he placed his hand on me. Not a majestic, unreachable gesture, but a human one. Tender, comforting, full of compassion. As if God himself was gently wiping away every invisible wound on my heart. Every scar from years of loneliness, burdens, and disappointment. I see you, Lisa, he said, though not in words. I have always seen you. I began to cry, like a lost child finally finding her mother's arms in a crowd. Not tears of fear, not tears of pain, but tears that knew I am loved. Something in me, a part that had gone dry from life's pressure, from the weariness of faith, was now being watered, not by logic, not by sermons, but by the honest, unconditional presence of the one who died for me. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to pray so I could be heard. I only wanted to listen. There was nothing left to ask for. Only one thing to hold on to. The truth that I am God's child. And that is enough. After a moment of deep peace, Jesus looked at me with eyes that were both gentle and serious. The gaze of a father about to speak something weighty to his child. Lisa, he said, I've heard every one of your prayers. Not a single word was missed. But there is something you and many others have not yet understood. Prayer is power. It is the breath of the soul. But most of my children are praying with their hands tied. I looked up at him, unsure. He raised his hand, and in front of me, the space seemed to unfold. The gentle light faded, revealing a scene, like a stage where people were praying, still alive in the world. I will show you 3 things, he said. 3 small phrases that have dimmed the light of my children's prayers. The first scene appeared. A woman knelt beside her bed, face tense, hands clenched tight. I didn't know who she was, but I recognized the look in her eyes. It was my own from years ago. She whispered, Lord, I hope you hear me. I hope you're still there. As soon as she spoke the word hope, I saw something strange. Her words rose, but weakly, like wisps of smoke. Then stopped. Caught in a thick fog. The prayer could not pierce the darkness. I turned to Jesus. He nodded gently, as if he had been waiting for me to notice. The first word my children must reclaim is hope, he said. Hope in human mouths often means uncertainty, fragility, a lack of confidence. But in me, hope is not a wish. It is a certainty. When you say, I hope you hear me, you plant doubt in your own prayer. And that doubt dims faith, making the prayer lose its power. I understood. I had prayed like that too. Every time I said, I hope, what I really meant was, I'm not sure you're still near. I had used the language of faith to cover a trembling heart. The second scene came into view. A man sat in traffic, praying, if it's God's will, please help me get out of here. At first, it didn't seem wrong. But then I saw something strange again. His words rose up, then hovered stuck, held back by a question mark. If it's God's will is a holy phrase, when used rightly, Jesus said. His tone was firm, but not angry. When you don't know which path to take. When you're facing great decisions, yes, say, let it be your will. But when you pray for peace, for healing, for daily needs, things I have already promised to give, don't put a question mark on my goodness. I lowered my head. I had thought that phrase was humility. But now I saw. I had been doubting the goodness of the very one I called Father. The final scene broke my heart. A young woman knelt, crying. She prayed, "Lord, I know I'm not worthy. I've sinned too much. I don't deserve to ask you for anything. But please heal my friend." I didn't just hear her words. I saw what they caused. Chains. Her words, "I'm not worthy," wrapped around her like invisible shackles. Her prayer couldn't rise. It was heavy, sad, crushed under guilt long since forgiven. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. His voice was low, grieved. "This is the most sorrowful prayer in all of heaven. When my children declare themselves unworthy, they are unknowingly denying the value of the cross." He looked deep into me. "You are not worthy because you are perfect. You are worthy because I paid the price." I wept. So many times I had prayed in shame, feeling like nothing but sinful dust. But I had forgotten. It was Jesus who called me daughter. Jesus who redeemed me with his own blood. 3 scenes. 3 words. 3 profound lessons. "Lisa," he said, "tell them this. They need to know. Prayer is not the cry of fear. It is the voice of a child who knows their father is listening." I nodded. Not because I understood everything, but because I believed. And for the first time, my faith wasn't vague or fragile. It was real, alive, powerful, and able to move heaven. I was still standing beside him, my heart trembling from everything I had just witnessed. But Jesus didn't let me stay in the emotion. He looked at me, his voice soft as the wind, yet filled with authority. "We will begin here, Lisa, because many of my children still say these words every day. I hope you hear me." He raised his hand, and a new scene unfolded before us. A small, dark room. A mother sat beside her child's bed, holding the little one's feverish hand tightly. Her head was bowed low, her voice a whisper. "Lord, I don't know if you can hear me, but I hope you see me. I hope you care for my baby." The prayer sounded sincere, so full of pain. But as I looked closer, I saw something unsettling. The words didn't rise. They floated only slightly upward, then thinned out like mist, as if the words themselves were wrapped in a haze of doubt. I turned to Jesus, my heart aching. "She's truly hurting," I said. "She's not trying to doubt you." "I know," Jesus nodded. "My love doesn't depend on perfect prayers. But Lisa, what I want you to understand and teach them is this. Words carry spirit. When you say hope but your heart is filled with worry, your words plant seeds of doubt into the soul." He looked straight into me. "Faith is not a feeling. It is a choice." Then I saw another image appear, another mother. But this time, she sat upright, her hand resting gently on her child's forehead. She spoke slowly, with calm authority. "Father, I know you are here. I know you love this child, and you have not abandoned me. I ask for healing because I believe you are the healer." That prayer, it was like a radiant arrow, piercing through space, shooting straight into heaven. Light spread through the room, as if faith had drawn heaven near. I stood still in awe. "Hope," he continued, "is what humans say when they are unsure. But with me, you don't have to be sure. You only have to believe." "Lisa," he said gently, "I don't want you to hope I'm listening. I want you to know I'm listening." A lump rose in my throat. For so many years, I had prayed like the first mother, always adding, "I hope you see," as if cracking the door. Not strong enough to believe. Not brave enough to be silent. I thought it was humility. Not because you called for me, but because I chose to stay. Tears welled in my eyes. Not from shame anymore, but from relief. For the first time in my life, I understood. Faith doesn't demand perfection. It demands a decision. No more praying like testing the waters. No more tossing words into the sky to see if anyone's there. Now I knew. God always hears. He's always present. And that certainty gives power to every word that leaves my lips. I looked back at him, about to ask something. But before I could speak, he smiled. I will show you the second part. And it, too, is binding many hands. Jesus was still standing beside me, his gaze full of love, yet solemn. He gave a small gesture. And another scene began to unfold. This time inside a car, stuck in heavy traffic. A middle-aged man sat behind the wheel, tension on his face. He glanced at his watch, tapped the steering wheel, and sighed. Lord, if it's your will, please help me get out of this. I don't want to be late again. I watched his prayer rise, then stop. It didn't fall, but it didn't ascend either. It hovered. Suspended, like something unseen was holding it back. And in the mist surrounding it, I saw a giant question mark, drawn in smoke, hanging over his words. I turned to Jesus. He's not doing anything really wrong, is he? I asked. He's still praying, still believing. No, he's not wrong, Jesus answered gently. He just forgot who his Father is. He looked at me. Not with rebuke, but with clarity. Lisa, the phrase, if it's your will, is sacred when used rightly. When you don't know which path to take. When you're standing at a crossroads. Asking for my will is an act of surrender. But when you're asking for something I have already clearly promised, like peace, healing, provision, then saying if is like questioning my very nature. I stood still, speechless. I remembered how many times I had whispered, if it's your will, give me strength to get through tomorrow. If it's your will, keep my son safe. I had thought that was humility. But now I saw. That false humility had made me pray like a beggar before the throne. Instead of a daughter of the king, Jesus lifted his hand. And the scene changed again. This time, I saw a woman standing in her kitchen. She placed her hand on an empty bag of groceries, closed her eyes, and said, Father, I thank you that you are my provider. Even though I don't yet see the bread today, I know the meal is already written into your plan. I don't ask as a stranger. I pray as a daughter. Because I know you are good and you won't let me go hungry. Immediately, her prayer blazed like fire, rising straight toward heaven. I saw light respond, radiating out from her like golden ripples. Something real, something powerful was happening. Jesus looked at me, his voice deep and steady. Lisa, faith is not begging me to do what I've already promised. Faith is standing on it, as if it's already done. He paused. And every time you say, if it's your will, about something I've already declared in my word, you pull your own prayer backward. It doesn't sadden me, but it stops heaven from intervening, because I cannot act through doubt. I bowed my head, heart aching, not because he was angry, but because I was awakening. I had thought I was honoring his will, but in truth, I had been living like someone who didn't even know what his will was. So, how should I pray? I asked, my voice trembling. With certainty. He said, with unshakable faith. You don't come as a stranger knocking. You come as a child walking into your Father's house. Because you know my love is the foundation beneath you. I understood. And for the first time, prayer, something I used to see as effort, now became power. Not because I prayed better, but because I finally understood who I was talking to. Jesus didn't rush. He allowed me to sit in the stillness of the lesson, so that faith would not just touch my mind, but take root in my spirit. Then, once again, he lifted his hand, and a new scene unfolded, one that made my heart tighten the moment I saw it. A young woman, head bowed at the edge of her bed, her shoulders shaking as she wept. Through broken breaths, she whispered, Lord, I know I'm not worthy to ask for anything. Last week I failed again. I fell again. I'm a mess. But please, if you can, have mercy on my friend. She's really sick. I didn't need Jesus to explain. I had been her. I knew that feeling. Needing God so desperately, but feeling too filthy to come near. But what I saw next made a chill run down my spine. With every word, "I'm not worthy," dark chains began to wrap around her. They came from her own mouth, twisting around the soul of her being like shackles of self-condemnation. Her prayer, though full of emotion, couldn't rise. It was pulled down by the weight of shame. I turned to Jesus, pain piercing my chest. I used to think saying, "I'm not worthy," was a sign of humility. I said softly. He looked at me, his eyes filled with both compassion and sorrow. "Lisa," he said, "when you come to me with repentance, I open my arms. But when you come to me burdened by sins I've already forgiven, and you still condemn yourself, you are saying that the cross wasn't enough." He paused, and then spoke again, his voice like a sacred song echoing through the very air. "I did not die on the cross, so you could live in shame. I did not shed my blood, so you would wear guilt like chains. I took the punishment, so you could walk in freedom. With the name, beloved daughter." Tears streamed down my face. I saw now that in the words, "I'm not worthy," was a distorted belief, a false humility that denied grace, and clung to the right to judge oneself. I had thought if I lowered myself enough, God would feel sorry for me. But he never needed me to lower myself for his love. He had already sacrificed to lift me up. Jesus raised his hand again. The scene shifted. Now, it was the same girl, but a different version of her. Still kneeling, but her eyes were filled with light. She said, "Father, I know I don't come to you in my own worthiness. I come in the name of Jesus, the one who died in my place. I thank you for wiping away my sin. And, because of that grace, today I ask for healing for my friend." Her prayer ignited like a beam of pure light. Strong, brilliant, white-hot, shooting straight into the heavens. I saw angels move. I saw heaven respond. Light descending like a healing river. Jesus whispered, "That is faith rooted in what I have done, not in human emotion. That is a prayer no longer chained, because it stands on the worth I have given." I fell to my knees. Now I will show you what happens when you pray rightly. When your prayers come from the certainty that I love you, from gratitude, and from faith that stands firm. He waved his hand, and the space around us opened once more. This time, I didn't see anyone crying. There was no fear, no prayers wrapped in confusion. Instead, I saw a young woman standing in a simple room. She had nothing in her hands, but her head was lifted. Her eyes were bright, and she spoke slowly. "Father, thank you for breath today. Thank you for being near. Even when I don't always see clearly. I don't ask for miracles. I only ask to live today in the light of the truth that I am loved. And from that place of safety, I ask you to move." As soon as she finished, I saw her words rise, like a stream of pure fire, shooting straight into the heavens. The room began to change. The walls lit up. The air shifted. And from above, a white light poured down. Not dramatic, not violent, but deep, warm, alive. I didn't just see that light. I felt it. The tenderness of heaven stepping into earth. Through the door opened by that one prayer, I turned to Jesus, overwhelmed. I never imagined my words could do that. "It's not your words, Lisa," he smiled. "It's the words of someone who knows she is the daughter of a king." He stepped closer. His voice softened, but every word etched itself into my soul. Prayer is not magic. It is not a petition form. It is union between your heart and mine. And when you know I am your Father, when you know you are loved, then every word you speak becomes light. I remembered all the years I had prayed in fear, always wondering if God was listening, always cautious, hesitant, as if I were walking on thin ice. I thought I lacked skill, but now I saw. What I lacked was confidence. Confidence that He is Father, that I am His daughter, and that this love is unshakable. I looked at Jesus, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. Not because I had grown, but because I was standing on a solid foundation. His love. He gently touched my chest, and I felt something shift within me, like a flame beginning to burn. Not because of emotion, but because faith had taken root. You've seen what light looks like when prayer is aligned, he said. Now, I will show you why. You must carry that light back into the world. I didn't want to leave this place. I thought it was just a silent longing in my heart. But Jesus already knew. He looked at me with a tenderness I will never forget. A look that saw the deepest desire within me. To stay. To remain by His side. To dissolve forever into this love that asked for nothing, yet gave everything. Lisa, He called me by name. Once again, His voice didn't echo in my ears. It echoed in my soul. I know you want to stay, but you still have work to do. My heart sank. You have lived in doubt, He continued. You have prayed as if I were distant. But now you know the truth. You have seen the light. And that light must not be hidden. Something in the space around us shifted. No longer just revelation, but a calling, a commissioning. Josh needs his mother. Your students need a teacher who loves with faith. But more than that, my people need awakening. They are praying without understanding the power they carry in their mouths. He paused, letting the weight of that truth settle into me. Every single one of them can speak light. If only they knew who they are in me. You must tell them. I looked at him, my voice trembling. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I'm just a teacher. A single mom. I'm not a preacher. Jesus smiled. A smile that was not only warm, but full of confirmation. I'm not looking for the perfect. I was being sent to live real. To pray real. To lead others back to a real relationship with the Father. I asked quietly, but what if I forget this? When the pain returns. When pressure and fear close in again like before. Jesus placed His hand on my shoulder. This time, not just to comfort, but to commission. You will not forget. Faith is not weakness. Prayer is not empty. Heaven is listening. I wanted to hold on to Him. But the very love He had given me was now the very thing pushing me to return. Not because I was ready. And then, the light began to fade. The warmth was pulled away. As swiftly as it had come. I felt my spirit being drawn back. Not by force, but by surrender. I didn't know what was waiting for me down there. But for the first time, I wasn't returning as someone afraid. I was returning. On mission. And with a light, more radiant than ever, burning inside me. I woke up to the sound of my name being called. Lisa. Lisa, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. A man's voice. Urgent. Both hopeful and uncertain. The first light I saw wasn't the light of heaven. It was the pale glow of fluorescent hospital lights. The sharp smell of antiseptic filled my nose. Something was caught in my throat. And when I tried to breathe, a wave of pain came crashing through me, as if my body was remembering everything it had just returned from. I was back in reality. My body was still the same. Tired. I felt my hand squeeze. A natural reflex. And I heard a quiet gasp beside me. She's back. She's alive. Someone cried. Someone else ran to call the doctor. But all of it felt distant, like background noise. Inside me, one truth rang louder than all the rest. I had just come back from death. Not to live as I had before, but to live like I never had before. The doctor shook his head as he looked over the chart. Over 23 minutes with no heartbeat and no brain damage. There's no explanation. But I didn't need one. I had just come from the place where every question was swallowed by love. What I brought back wasn't proof. It was peace. Josh was brought into the room. He stood still for a long moment, his wide eyes filled with tears, torn between joy and disbelief. When I opened my arms, he ran into them, sobbing. I held him close, the smell of his hair. And you'll never be alone again, because God is always right here, even when you can't see him. In the days that followed, I recovered faster than anyone expected. Neighbors began to ask, "Lisa, you've changed. Why do you seem so peaceful?" I just smiled. There were no sermons. Only this. Because I know my Father is listening. My greatest dream is no longer to live long, but to live real. To live like someone who no longer needs to shout to be heard. To live like someone who has died and come back. Not just to exist, but to carry light to those still praying in the dark. Now I know every prayer is an arrow of light. If launched in faith, every soul that feels invisible is already fully loved. And every person who's ever whispered, "God, are you listening?" needs to hear the answer I was given. I am always listening. I am always closer than your breath. And you are always loved. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Lisa's story. A journey from death and back. Not to speak of strange wonders, but to remind us of something far more important. God is closer than we think. And he is always listening. Maybe you are praying through tears right now. Maybe you've said, "I hope, if it's God's will," or "I'm not worthy." But today, you've heard the truth. Hope must become certainty. God's will has already been revealed through his love. And your worthiness doesn't come from you. It comes from the cross. Don't hesitate to draw near to your Father, not as a stranger, but as a child who knows they are loved. If this story touched you, hold on to that. And when you pray tonight, remember this. You are not speaking into emptiness. You are talking to the one who loved you before you ever knew how to pray. May peace be with you. May your faith grow stronger. Your prayers shine brighter. And your heart be sure of this. You are never alone. Until we meet again. In the light. In faith. And in every whisper heard by heaven.